introduce Dr. Majid Jabad joining us live from Gaza. Dr. Majid is a medical doctor at the European Gaza Hospital and a frontline healthcare worker through this ongoing assault. He has been working tirelessly treating the wounded and chronically ill, even as the healthcare system around him is being systemically dismantled. He has also encountered some of the recently released Palestinian prisoners have been treating the ceasefire exchanges and speak to what they have endured. So, Dr. Majid, thank you so much for being with us today under such difficult circumstances. We deeply appreciate your time and insight. I'd like to welcome you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam. I'm doing okay. It's been a rough couple of days, especially after the targeting of Nasser Hospital and in the bombing of European Gaza Hospital. And I was there, and it's been really difficult trying to figure out, like, first of all, just process that you've been here again while a hospital just got bombed, and then trying to figure out what to do with the patients, what to do as a medical staff, and just to understand that this is probably not ending anytime sooner, and all efforts for resolving this conflict is just smoke and mirrors by the West to just crush our spirits and continue this project of ethnic cleansing.
Dr. Majid, I really want to say thank you so much to being here, especially during these incredibly difficult circumstances. Can't possibly imagine what the situation is like. And all of us are sending as much support as we can in our capacity. I want to start exactly where you just mentioned. You were at a Nasser hospital during the strike. Can you please tell us more about what that was like for you and everyone around you?
Well, I was at European Gaza Hospital when the airstrikes happened. Uh, we So the day before the bombing happened, there was a release, a handover of the American Israeli soldier, Aidan Alexander. I'm sure all of you know about it. He was an American who went to Israel, he became a soldier, and he was captured. And, one of the important things about Trump's visit to the Middle East is trying to achieve a victory, gain a point to release this soldier. And it happened. And during this period, Israel promised that there will be like a 12 hours of no drones, no airstrikes, no bombings, just to make sure he doesn't get harmed. Um, Even before this 12-hour window ended, after the release, the bombing started instantly. We started hearing artillery shells. I'm talking about someone who was at the eastern front of Gaza and Khan Yunis, so it's very close to the Israeli army and very close to the new axis, the Mirage axis that was recently created to basically take over all of Rafah and destroy what remains of any residential areas and just wipe it off the face of the planet. And the airstrikes were really, really scary. And the impact, the sound, the earth was shaken. And this is not a normal comment from someone who has been here for like a year and a half. We're used to airstrikes, we're used to bombings, but people were getting killed again, were getting injured. And there was a mix of hopelessness, witnessing your loved ones, you're witnessing your people getting killed and injured after promises of a ceasefire. And so, after this very long night, most of the doctors were already exhausted. We just wanted to hand over our shift, go back home, and while we were packing inside the hospital, we heard a new earthquake. I don't know how to explain it to you exactly, but you suddenly just hear a very quick, rapid sound like, and then the windows shatter, the doors um, get uprooted, and you have the tiles just flying out of the floor, and the roofs just falling down, and it's filled with debris and gunpowder, and it makes you choke and cough. And while trying to understand, like, where did this happen, you look at the window and you see the yard One of the entrances yards has been bombed, and it's burning still from all the effects of the heat. Shrapnels were so big, the size of my hand, and people were screaming. Women were screaming, and there were children just looking for their parents. You go outside, you see the other impacts, the huge craters created by the airstrikes. And yeah, at this moment, you process, you try to understand that this happened. They bombed another hospital, and we tried to salvage and save as many lives as possible. At that point, we saw bodies hanging up from trees. We saw people um, trying to dig the craters to save people that were buried under. But as we were trying to do this, the drones, the quadcopters were shooting people who were trying to save more lives. And the ICRC has notified everyone that no one has to move for an hour, and this seemed like a death sentence for everyone who was injured outside, waiting to be saved. And some people tried to save some lives, and some were successful, but the quadcopters shot them, and they were also injured. And this really increased the intensity of the situation there. This event lasted for the whole night, and it didn't really end. From all the fear and all the shock that the this hospital, who was never bombed before directly, is being attacked and the army is very close, patients decided to flee at their own risk, and a lot of the medical staff. The hospital, the sceneries of patients leaving. We're talking about patients with broken bones, wearing a cast, walking in and cranes and walking sticks. We're talking about very old women who are struggling to even have their own relatives reach the hospital and evacuate them. And they eventually even had to push the patients on their beds in a very critical conditions out of fear leaving the hospital, even though it's not optimal. We tried calling ambulances, but every ambulance in the hospital was already damaged, and the entrances to European hospital was were also bombed, and we couldn't get any ambulance in, and we couldn't get anyone out unless they decide to walk the distance, which is we're talking kilometers of walking for an hour or two to reach the next safest position. And this really came off as a shock, really, because I had to figure ways for the patients to leave the hospital because I can't just leave them alone. And the next morning, the OCHA, the ICRC, has notified us that this event has ended and we should come back to working as normal. But, well, a few hours in to this shift, it was fine. Everyone was trying to repair the damages, everyone was trying to figure out how to start working again. But the infrastructure was completely damaged. The oxygen tanks, the the sterilization equipment, the sanitation, the sewage pipelines, the clean water filtering systems, the um, telecom services, the electricity and the solar power, all of them were damaged. And that means we basically cannot function without that. And as the engineering department was trying to fix the hospital around 11 a.m., the quadcopters started attacking them. They bombed a bulldozer that was trying to fill the craters that were hindering the ambulances and people from moving in and moving out. And they started shooting people back again, and they started bombing the residential area around European Gaza hospital. And at that point, the Ministry of Health decided that, well, the international community's obviously don't care enough, or they're giving us false news, or the Israelis just are playing with us at this point. We decided that we had to evacuate the hospital, even though it's not an optimal option. The the most difficulty was with the ICU patients. We're talking about critically ill patients. The European hospital has about 28 beds, which is quite large compared to many health facilities in Gaza, and it was already filled with critically ill patients. But also other health facilities that were partially working were already full, and that created this dilemma of I can't get them out, and if I got them out, where to? And these hospitals were having this intense discussion of can we discharge some patients? Can some patients survive outside of the ICU? And this took 3 4 hours of every consultant just discussing things deeply, step by step, to decide who has the priority, even though they all need it. And these discussions by healthcare workers are not done outside of Gaza because we don't have the leverage, we don't have the luxury to admit anyone that we can. We have limited medications. If you saw the statistics, we lack every kind of medication at least at 50 or 60%. What I mean is that 50 or 60% of that category of medications is zero stock, nada, not at all. And we also don't have heart medication. We don't have equipment to deal with the critically ill patients, and so just to deal with any of them is very costly, and it has to be very measured and calculated. We cannot just throw resources on everyone and then pay people enormous payments like what happens in the West, sadly. And so the whole hospital was evacuated besides the ICU for that other day and the oncology department, patients with cancer, patients with tumor. And it was really difficult because, first of all, the only storage compound that has cancer medications and cancer patients' care facilities is now only at European Gaza Hospital. It is the last one. And we have 60 to 70% zero stock percentage of medications for cancer patients. And the remaining 30% are not enough because most of them need radiation, they need surgeries, they need many complex, sophisticated tests that were not even available here before October 7th because the system, the healthcare system in Gaza was designed to be reliable on the Israeli occupation, to be relying on just the patient leaving abroad. We are not allowed to be self-autonomous. And so it took us 3 days to evacuate the whole hospital fully. And many of the patients are already struggling. Some patients are calling us saying that they need help, they need care, and we're trying to guide them through it. The steps that they can do to alleviate their suffering, but it's not really enough. The European hospital was the last fully functioning hospital in Gaza. It was the only one that wasn't bombed at that point. And it is a tertiary hospital. That means that every hospital in Gaza that you hear about, Shifa, Al-Aqsa, Nasser, that anyone who has a little bit of a problem with dealing with some patient or having a capacity problem, they know that they can send them at European Gaza Hospital because we used to absorb everything, used to endure um, all the burdens of the whole Ministry of Health. But now we don't have that yet anymore. And this is all systemically designed. They claim that there are some hidden facilities underground, but it turned out that it was the school behind European Gaza Hospital, mind you, and it was never bombed anyway, and it's filled with hundreds of displaced people that are still there because they have nowhere to go. and they're bombing this area. I'm right now in Al-Mawasi. Al-Mawasi is heavily crowded with people, and there are like each meter that you step in, there's a tent, there's 10 displaced people. There's no space anymore, and these people know that. So they, until this day, occupied around 43% of Gaza, and they want to take more. Where are we supposed to go? And there seems to be no solution, and no light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehdi, for sharing that. I know it is not easy to relive those moments, but I want to reassure you that it is so important for us and for the world to hear this truth of what's happening on the ground. Thank you for being that truth. I do have one more question for you. Um, I know you mentioned that there is, of course, shortages within these hospitals, and we often hear here in the West, in the United States, and so on and so forth, something of, Gaza's healthcare system is under collapsing, right? It's on the verge of collapse. I want to first ask you, what does it actually look like when there's an aid blockade? Because we hear this a lot, that there's a blockade of aid on the border. And what does it mean when we hear the news saying that Gaza's healthcare system is on the verge of collapse? Because we see one thing, but you, of course, are living in another. So if you would allow us, please, to understand better, inshallah.
Well, the aid blockade, in a medical aspect, means that there's not enough medications, as in pills, but also as surgical equipment, as disposable items. We're talking about not only the over-the-counter medications. We're not talking about just Tylenol or Advil. No, we're talking about patients who require very immediate surgeries, patients with heart disease and orthopedic surgeries. And at this point, we are lacking 99% of all cardiovascular equipment and medications. That means that anyone with a heart attack will probably die. It's a death sentence for these people. Same thing with patients who have broken bones, are hurt and injured by the shrapnels, and they are really very in a very devastated state. But we cannot do anything. We don't have these screws. We don't have anything to put them into place, and so they are left to heal in a very bad shape, unaligned. And maybe in the future, maybe we will be able to break their bones in a very painful process, and then we will may have the items to fix the bones again. There was, during the ceasefire, the recent one, quote unquote ceasefire, there was no medical aid getting into Gaza, barely anything. And this didn't facilitate the situation. Didn't really help us improve. Actually, quite the contrary. During the ceasefire, we also noticed this is the continuation of the downward decline of the healthcare services that we can provide to our patients. The hospitals are again empty. We're having difficulties even accessing clean water. These bottles of normal saline, we struggle to find them anymore. The cannulas that we can put into the veins, we don't have these anymore. Chemotherapy drugs is difficult. We don't have even the diagnostic tools to diagnose people with cancer here. So if I suspect that someone has cancer, I cannot make I cannot say it for sure because I cannot just take a sample using a certain tool, and I don't have the kind of material that I need to look through the microscope to diagnose cancer, for example. And so this is also a death sentence. You know why? Because if, let's say, let's assume that there is an evacuation happening soon, I need to confirm that this patient has cancer to leave. And if I don't confirm it, this patient has no right to leave. And this is just very frustrating to deal with. Also, when the hostages that were released recently for that happened during the ceasefire, before the ceasefire, and after the ceasefire, in smaller amounts, we weren't able to take care of them. These patients who are the released abductees by the Israeli army, had many, like a variety of injuries in a single patient. We're talking about patients who were abductees who were beaten up by the batons or by any other tool. They had skull injuries and skull fractures. You can see their bones just in a very deformed manner because it was broken and not taken care of, and so it healed in a very abnormal way, and it hurts. It causes all kinds of headaches and all kinds of just pain to them. We had patients who had eye injuries. We're talking about retinal detachment, the layer that is connected to your nerves that allows you to see things, and you don't notice it at the start, but then if it doesn't heal and if you don't treat it, you will not be able to see anymore. We saw fractures here and around the bones of the eyes. We have these called raccoon eyes, were just so blue and red and painful. We had patients with something we call a cornflower ear because the ear was so beaten up it gets bloated and it doesn't heal very well. And some even we need sometimes to just, if it dies out, we may even need to take off the whole ear. And then we had patients with broken ribs. Broken ribs were everywhere. Shoulder. We're talking about the arms because they were just defending themselves and getting beaten by the batons. Their wrists were. You had these very deep lesions. Where they were ulcerating, were painful. The wristbands that were connected, the handcuffs that were so tightly wrapped around the wrists. We're talking about um, they had these wristbands with different colors saying uh, very defeatist messages written in Arabic. They had serial numbers, and we still don't know what it means yet, but everyone had it. We had patients that were tattooed or written on their faces or their bodies, many messages written in Arabic or Hebrew. We had patients that had chronic and severe illnesses. For example, we had a patient, a released abductee that had prostate cancer and wasn't treated properly with any kind of chemotherapy or radiation therapy, and he was held there for more than a year. Can you imagine the prognosis and that possibility that we may lose him because uh, we cannot just take care of that? We had patients who had many disease, very chronic, and they need to be oxygen and on oxygen all the time. And they were bullying that patient in a way that they do not provide them with the oxygen all the time. And they were left to choke, left to suffer. We had another patient who was very old who had a stroke, and his whole right body was paralyzed. And he could have been saved, but they left him alone. And he's basically just like that all the time, barely even able to speak or swallow. And so, and also we had these patients with rashes, scabies, just scratching themselves so bad it seeps pus and it gets infected. They have all kinds of fever because of it, and we were appalled. And at this moment, we realized how defective our healthcare system is. We don't have any aid at all because I cannot even give him a simple cream. Can't give him a simple antibiotic. Can't give him a simple pill of Tylenol because this is all was designed systematically. This was intentional. It's not new to October 7th. You can read all about it. It's all written down there, even from the the opposed resources. We're talking about the Gaza diet. If you heard about it, it's all the amount of food just is calculated. The amount of medication is calculated. We are not designed to have. We are not allowed to have self autonomy. We're not allowed to live a very dignified life, and this will keep on going, and it's getting worse. And I don't know where we're heading from now.
SubhanAllah. First and foremost, thank you, uh, Dr. Majid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on you and your team and your people around us. It's beyond heartbreaking to hear this. So, but I know that it's necessary for us to witness and to carry all this reality with us, especially as you mentioned, when you're not sure what this is how to, of course, hope to remain hopeful but in such dire circumstances, the reality is, of course, overwhelming. I do want to open it up really quick to our audience. If you guys have any questions for Dr. Majid about what he's shared or the situation on the ground at Gaza, please go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll take one or two before we move to our next speaker, inshallah. And if they don't have a question, then I'll steal it and I'll ask one more question because I have several questions to draw on this. So I think some of the questions and comments that we continue to get is um, kind of twofold. First, it's what can we do? And I know that it's such a maybe annoying question because it's like, I don't know, figure it out. But what can we do to support specifically Gaza's healthcare system? And how have you been able to adapt? There's so many of these, or have you been able to adapt these difficult circumstances? Charles, those just seem like two of the questions. Dr. Majid, we would like to have you answer the question, um, how have you been able to adapt despite all of these difficult circumstances, and what can we do to support Gaza's healthcare system?
Um, well, adaptation is not the word. We're talking about Palestinians who were here since we were born. I was born and raised in Gaza, and so the ability for us to adapt or process and handle what's been going on is not something new. We've seen people getting killed. We've lost loved ones. We've seen blood, and we've seen death since our ages, our young childhood. Really, trying to become a healthcare worker in Gaza is just a very difficult process, uh, and every patient you lose is like you've seen this many times before. Someone you love or someone you appreciate or even another Palestinian that you don't know. It's been happening because of all the suffering and oppression that has been ongoing. And really, there is no um, handling this in a way. You learn to detach yourself and just not try to process this as much as possible because all this pain is unnecessary, really. And there is no rationalizing for what's been going on. Besides that, we are dealing with an oppressed fascist state that really don't care about our own lives or our own dignity or our own. They talk about us like animals, you know, the way Nazi Germans spoke about any other minority back in the day, and even worse because they're bragging about it. And so, trying to find um, any justification, any rationalizing for what happened is just not going to help. We're trying to survive here, and survival is the way we resist. And as a doctor, trying to save lives and heal people is also something that is a theme of resistance to what's been going on for us here.
Absolutely. Dr. Majid, 100% the service that you're doing is a form of resistance, nonetheless, and we all recognize that. Um, Jazakallah khair, Dr. I know that words will never be enough to make dua. Every single moment that you spend serving your people, every single life that you try to save, every step that we take in the hospital is written Allah as a witness that you are not alone, that Allah sees you, that your Ummah stands with you, that we stand with you. We can count you among the righteous and Sabirin. And please keep us in your dua as well. And may we never forget our responsibility to carry this message forward. Um, we are so honored to have had you with us. Please stay safe and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and your loved ones. I hope to stay in contact with you in any way that we can support you, inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu
Alaikum assalam.
Inshallah, we will be hearing from our next speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Muhammad Horeini. I will, inshallah, be giving a quick introduction. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad. How are you?
Yeah, Allah.
Alhamdulillah. Muhammad is a youth activist and a community leader from Masafir Yatta in the occupied West Bank. For those who don't know, it is a collection of villages in the south of Hebron Hills or Khabib, where about 1,000 Palestinians live under constant threat of forced displacement. The Israeli army has declared their land a firing zone and for decades has tried to evict anyone. Muhammad and his family have been on the front lines of the struggle to defend their land and way of life against settler violence and military demolitions. He's also part of the group Youth of Samud, which organizes resistance and steadfastness in Masafiyatullah. Muhammad, thank you so much for joining us. You and your community have been through so much, and I'm personally grateful to hear directly from you. Could you please just give us a history, an update of Masafiyatullah so we as the audience can better understand?
Yeah, of course. Firstly, I'm really happy to be with you today, and really thank you, brother Mustafa, Muhammad Mustafa, to give me the chance to talk about the daily reality on what's happening in the West Bank. Even like my community is an example of what's happening in the all over the West Bank. But I mean, first, like all of what I'm going to speak and to say to you is really not comparable to what our people in Gaza are facing. Like as Dr. Majid says now, and but at the end we are under the same regime and the same killing machine that is trying to raise us and to ethnically cleanse us from our land and forcibly displace us. So to talk about my community, Masafriyatta is like located in the southern tip of the West Bank, bordering the green line that's separating between the 48 occupied land and the West Bank. So, I mean, me as a personal Palestinian, I'm a refugee from 1948 from a Nakab desert, which is now known as the Beersheba. My grandparents succeeded to survive the Nakba and they fled where now I was born in Masafriyatta in the village of Atwani. So my community is like a collection of many villages that are up to 27 villages. And there is almost approximately 3,000 Palestinians who are living here. But in my community, there is so many villages are forcibly displaced since 1999 by the Israeli forces. So just to give a brief explanation of the historical context of my community, and which is an example of many communities are located in Area C in the West Bank, which is under the military control of Israel, the occupation control. So like my community was declared as a firing zone in 1980s, and which was the first pretext of Israel to forcibly displace the Palestinians from their lands. And I just wanna give an explanation about the firing zone. The firing zone is a policy that was initiated by a person who called Ariel Sharon. Ariel Sharon is a Zionist that initiated this idea, which is in 1967. He just said that as the initiated person of the firing zone, it was intended for one purpose, which is a land reserve for Israel settlements. So the goal from this policy, which is just to give the chance for Israel settlements to grow on our land and to suffocate Palestinian communities and erase them from their land. And what's the propaganda of the Zionist media that's like that are spreading out and washing mind the Western countries are that they care about the Palestinian safety, so that the Palestinians are living in a firing zone and we need to kick them out of here because it's dangerous on their safety. But I mean, you come already to a place where it's already inhabited with Palestinians. So I'm just like talking to you about like how the way of the Zionists are promoting for their policies and ethnic cleansing against the Palestinians. So then they started to conduct live trainings, and we could like witness at some point. I can hear some military training with the rockets, with tanks, with helicopters, with everything. And they make our communities as a training zone and our homes also as a part of their training zone, so they can bring the new soldiers who are now reserving in their army reserve. They just bring them to train them on us in the night raids. They just bring them and raid the Palestinian homes and kick the Palestinian family out, and they just made the house upside down, just a part of terrorizing the Palestinians and intimidating them in the daily basis. So after 1980s, when they start to build the military bases of the Israeli soldiers, then they start to build houses for Israel settlers. Israel settlers are people who come from abroad, from different countries of the world, and they come here and they have more rights than we do on our land. They have the right to build. They have human services. Uh, Whatever protection and whatever like service that their government are providing them to displace and attack Palestinians. And these people are extremist people. They are the tool of Israel to attack and displace the Palestinians, to terrorize them, and they are granted full impunity to attack us. So like in case they like now they attack us in the home and we like want to defend ourselves, who at the end will be arrested is us, because we will be criminalized if we just try to defend our land and ourselves. So, as I said, in 1999, there was like a huge war crime against my community where there was like 8 villages were forcibly displaced. And then there was like a legal fight with the Israeli military court. I mean, we as a Palestinian living under military control, we are obliged to deal with their law, to fight them with their own law. Okay, because we have no other way to fight, and to also our existence and our fight against this regime. So I mean, when you go to this military courts, you're going to fight to see the judge, who is a settler living in one of the settlements and the outposts, the illegal settlement and outpost in the West Bank, who's trying also to kick other Palestinian communities from their lands. So we never expected any justice from this court. So, in 2006, the Israeli government were also trying to build an apartheid wall, which is annexing my community within the 48 occupied lands, and then they can control us, and then they can just evict us from our homes easily and control us. But my community just stands up and fight and pay the high price for this resilience. And many of the people were arrested and beaten, and who were injured, and who lost his eye, who lost his leg, against this apartheid wall. And until today, my community is under imminent threat of being forcibly displaced and ethnically cleansed by many policies that now they are creating with the state land that they are announcing our land. So the state land also a policy that says it's an Ottoman law. It was used during the Ottoman era, but Israel has added its filth on it by if you don't use your land for 3 years, it will be confiscated as state land, which is then it will be granted for the settlers, and then they will just start to establish their outpost and then settlement, which will steal more and more on Palestinian lands. But I mean, how could the Palestinians use their land while the settlers are attacking them and shooting them and killing them on daily basis? And in case we try to defend our land, you will be the one who will be shot or arrested for I don't know how much, how many the period will be. And then this is like how they just impose pressure on the Palestinians to make the life unbearable. And on the other hand, you are not allowed to have a water system or like electricity or a shelter. So most of my communities are most of the villages in my community are living in tents, caves, and caravans. Okay, because they are living in the firing zone, and they are they are not able to build. But just like close to the village that are living and existing on the ground, you can see just the illegal outpost, which is even illegal in the Israeli law. But that doesn't stop Israel from indirectly subsidizing them and allowing them into larger settlements, illegal settlements. Okay? Because this is what the idea of is, just giving the chance for these settlers to expand and steal more Palestinian lands. And the Palestinians are not allowed to exist even. Okay, so as we as a people who were like living under this constant threat of settler violence, of military trainings and forcible displacement, of course we wanna like follow the steps of our grandparents who refused to be a refugee once again by Israel, and we are still fighting to have our lands back that was occupied in 1948 and until today, until we are now existing, and even it will be until our dying breath. So like but the price that we are paying now is just due to the ignorance of the international community, to be honest. And like the world have ignored the Palestinian cause for years and for decades, and it's really they failed many times to serve the humanity and what they're calling for, like helping the humanity from being massacred or like to not unrepeated catastrophe in the world. So, like, I mean, as an activist, as a Palestinian who born in this, like, I was just like inspired of the people and the community that I was born in, and just followed the path of my father and my grandmother. That she never lost the hope and until she had dying breath, and we are still going, like, fighting for our liberation and justice and like for equal rights and life, to have a dignified life and liberated life as any people in this world. And as well, like we're a people who have the right to exist by any means according to national law. But it seems that as a Palestinian, we're out of this discussion. So I don't know. Like there is many things that can be many things that can explain, but there is like a huge information of like historical context. And now, right now, just to give a brief explanation of October 7th, now the settlers who are attacking us now, they are the ones who's ruling the area. They are in the army reserve. They are they are like armed, and many of my neighbors were paying the price and being a victim of this settler terror. Like my cousin who was shot since the beginning of the genocidal war in Gaza, and now my neighbor he just he lost his leg. And many other villages around me, that every day, and even like I was attacked and beaten, and then I was being arrested just for being existing as a Palestinians. So like every single day you can expect anything can happen, and your life will just take another path. So I don't know, in the next like half an hour or 1 hour, I don't know, I will just go to another village to my people to spend the night there. I don't know what will happen. Maybe I will be shot, maybe I will be arrested. I don't know what will happen for me. So it's just like you are living in a period that you don't have any expectation for the next day or the next hour. And I mean, we're still living and resisting this oppression, and there is no any way to get to have a step back.
First and foremost, thank you so much for doing that. It's important for everyone to realize the history of the Safariata, especially because many people don't know about the villages or the city itself, what's been happening. So thank you for sharing the history. One thing I've noticed is how much the people of Safariata, how much they have continued to refuse to abandon their land. They refuse to abandon their cause. They continue to say that this is our land. They're willing to sacrifice for it, even when that price is so high that you were mentioning. Um, I want to ask about something that we hear a lot about in Mesafriata. Um, when settlers come, they usually come in gangs, and they come in like formed groups with the intention to harm, hurt, and destroy Palestinians. Can you explain more about this? Why is this the case? If Israel's an occupation, what do the settlers have to do with any of this? Why are we seeing them holding down? Why are they showing up to your house at 3 o'clock in the morning? This is something else.
Yeah, I told you that these militias, I mean, they are a tool for the occupation to terrorize and displace the Palestinians. And I mean, usually they come with gangs, and they are also protected by the Israel military. So, as a Palestinian, what what you should do, as what they think, is that you need to be beaten or killed in silence and don't even defend yourself. This is the idea. And uh, like I don't know how to say this, but I mean it's just like a part of domination on the Palestinians, that you just need to be killed in silence, and you don't have no any way of form of resistance against them. And this is like a part of just like make the life unbearable, in other words, like to push you that you should leave, you should feel as a Palestinian that no one left for you, and you have no feeling of safety, no feeling of rights, so you can flee to another part of land that you will be a refugee in, and that they can take your homes and land. I mean, even if we flee to another place, they will follow us as what they did in 1948. They just followed to 1967 and occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. So it's the same scenarios that are repeating now, but it's like in 1948 they used with massacring the people, and now in Gaza, of course. But in the West Bank is now just replaced with bulldozers. Like every single week there is demolition and terror of settlers, and denying you as a human from having any basic human rights, even education, even whatever as a human you need. They just prevent you from it. It's like these like simple explanation that I can tell, and whatever I can tell you now, it will not be enough to understand the reality unless you just come here on the ground and see how it goes, and like live with the Palestinians, and as the international activists who are coming here and stand in solidarity with the Palestinians in my community and other many communities in the West Bank, like Jordan Valley, or in the villages in the north of the West Bank.
Unlike, it's so important for people to understand that you don't actually through the videos understand the entire picture of what's happening in Palestine or in alone in Gaza, right? What you're witnessing is just a fraction of the reality of Palestinian inmates. You aren't the one being woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning by settlers setting ablaze the home or cutting, water tanks and slashing. These aren't the realities. So I think that's a beautiful thing that you mentioned. That to actually sit with a Palestinian and to hear stories like this is so important. Muhammad, I also have seen videos of settlers not only attacking people, but they target animals, they target the land, they target basic means of livelihood. Like we've seen reports of settlers poisoning or shooting livestock. They're burning crops, vandalizing water sources. Like in your view, like why do the settlers target animals and land
Of
itself? Like
course.
what are they
Yeah.
trying to achieve with this?
Yeah, so my community is a rural community that depends on agricultural work and livestock. So it's the main thing that they depend as a community. So it's like every family have its own ecosystem that depends on and doesn't need any even job or anything to work. But as Israel focuses on this as a part of the communication as a Palestinian with the land, and it's very hard for Israel even to kick us from here because the land is our identity and our connection, and is also the land that can rely us or continue living on this land. So our livelihoods we depend on agriculture and working in the land, our livestock. So this is the main thing that now Israel is focusing on to kill everything that you depend on as a Palestinians, from water cistern, and so we here depend on water wells. So that just on the water rains, and we just sometimes buy the water to fill our water wells. So this is like how our like lifestyle goes as a Palestinians and as a farmers, you know. So like it's like a simple life, but Israel now is making it harder as a Palestinian to deal with your life and destroying everything that you depend on from livelihoods, which is your crops, your sheep, your animals, whatever you have. This is what now they are trying to erase, you know, and like I mean now after October 7th, now like many Palestinians in my community were denied access to their livelihoods, to their land, and now it's have been like really and a suffocating policy of my community. Like you know, like at the beginning of the war, we were even denied 20 meters of my home. We were like denied from moving towards our land, and if we do so, we'll be attacked. And there is many documentation about this. And my father was being attacked. He was going to be shot and killed by these criminals. And but I mean, we break this. We just like I mean, okay, they were trying to threat us and to scare us, but I mean, we don't stop at some point to just to listen to them and what they are like trying to impose a new reality. We just continue to go in the land, and they are like to fight this new policy that they are imposing. But other communities, I mean, they were like they paid the high price of being attacked, night raids, and threatened by this militias. And some people now are like they cannot go with their flocks to graze in their land because they will be shot or they will be arrested. And then after you will be arrested, it will you just need if there is no any like anything that approves, let's say, of what they claim, what they accuse you of, they will just let you pay a fine and then you will go home. Like a fine for what? Just attacks for being a Palestinian, you know? So like here how it goes on the ground, just like trying to make the life from all the side around you, just like there is no other way, just like you are under oppression and you need to go out of here so you can have a better life. But I mean, our life like this is for us better thousands times that we go out of our land.
Yeah, subhanallah, it's really difficult to hear about all the different tactics that they use and how um, they continue to try to find new ways to stop Palestinians from going in.
Exactly.
I
Like
yeah, go ahead.
just I want to mention also how they like. I mean, there is many tactics that Israel has creating, and even still, you know, creating more and more. So they have now started with bringing underage settlers with their flocks, roaming the Palestinian land, destroying their crops. And if we as a Palestinian just go and we need to call who? To call the Israeli police, you know. So like this kids, you know, they will tell you that they are kids, they do know nothing, you know. But these kids are like they are programmed and like these scenarios are prepared by them and even by the police to destroy the Palestinian crops. And if you do anything to them, and even you try to kick them out of there, you'll be arrested. And it happened to me many times. Like the last year, I was arrested like with my father. Like I was arrested, me and my father, my sister, my little brother. So like the half of the family were arrested just for defending our land and for kicking this settler out of here. You know. So it's like just an oppression, like literally it's an oppression and apartheid regime that we are living in. So just like you can imagine, like my house is here. I'm now in my house. Just 200 meters away from my house, there is the settlement and the outpost. And this like these settlers are living under a civil law, and we are here living under like military law. So like it's just when you come on the ground, you can see how the Palestinian communities are suffocated and isolated from each other, and how the settlements are now still continuing with isolating the Palestinian communities and still more Palestinian lands. So like now tonight I'm going to spend the night to a village that is not is like is far away from my village, 15 minutes on foot by foot. Now we are going to take half an hour or more just to take around because of the establishment of the outpost and settlement to reach that village that we are going to spend the night there. You just like can imagine like 15 minutes on foot, now turns to 30 minutes with car.
Well, it's a very clear case of apartheid, a very clear case of fragmenting the Palestinian people. You mentioned, Muhammad, that you and your father, I remember watching from one of your videos, I've also seen your father possibly was arrested after a settler attack on the relatives as well. Can you share more about how Israeli imprisonment has affected your family and your community? Like what happened in your father's case? And is he okay now?
Look, we are a family like activist family that since like years and decades we have been fighting against this oppression, and we are very well known to Israel. And my father, like he like paid a high price. He was once attacked and he was accused of trying to murder a settler. Like this is what the accusation gives him, and he was going to face for imprisonment for at least 10 years. But luckily, there was like a proof that the settlers who attacked us and who broke my father's arms. But even though like my father was innocent, they let him pay a high fine, which was like 10,000 shekel, and then he was banned from reaching the land for 1 month. And like this was like like for what? Like I mean, even he is like innocent, and you saw all of the proofs, but then like it continues like just in a regime that's just oppressing the Palestinian. While the settlers who broke both of my father's arms, they were like going freely, and it happens the same with my neighbor Saeed, who was shot and then his leg was amputated, and then he was imprisoned and held in custody for 4 days, and then he need to pay a fine for being released. So like it's just a part of oppressing, oppression, and like it's an expression feeling for this situation. So like as an activist, we have been threatened many times, and anyone who did to speak out against Israel atrocities, he will be threatened or silenced by Israel. My brother, luckily, he's now he was out of like a long-term trial that was on him. He was going to face uh, 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 like I forget the name of the detention, like being arrested for many years, and he don't know for how long. Sorry. So and my father, he was for sure arrested many times, as I as well. Before I turned 18 years old, I was arrested 8 times. So it's like a part of like intimidating and terrorizing the Palestinians and stop from doing what we are doing on the ground. So as a
And
Palestinian, we are like also strengthening our people who are on the ground. So the demolitions and all of this, like now we are trying to look for new ways by rebuilding the caves that our grandparents used to live in as a part, like it's under the ground and it's not above the ground. So again, in the law, anything above 1 meter, it considered as a building which is under threat of being demolished. It just if it's for Palestinian. So the caves are under the ground, which is a way for remaining in the land and continue resilient, like resisting in this land and to be existing.
so I did not know that they were building underground. And that is such a beautiful way of Palestinians continuing to adapt and resist against the settler government.
It's the
But
Palestinian traditional lifestyle. So, as our grandparents used to live, we are still living the same lifestyle that they live.
and Mohammed, I wanted to ask you, um, there's a lot of young activists in West Africa or in the West Bank who are trying to resist against the Israeli occupation and the apartheid. Are you finding that the settler raids or that the arrests are making them more afraid to stand up, or is it making them more determined to stand up? What's the reality of activism there? What does it look
I
like?
mean, after October 7th, they launched a huge campaign of arresting and imprisoning many Palestinian activists and around the West Bank. So, like until today, there are still many of them in jail after almost 2 years of the genocidal war on Gaza. So it's a part of just a part of a message for the rest of the people in Palestine to anyone who dared to speak out against Israel, he would be arrested and tortured and humiliated. So, I mean, there is people who really like were a little bit down. They don't want to be shown up because of the fear of being attacked or arrested, and so it's like I mean, as a human, it's our right to feel to be afraid, but there is who refuse to continue silence against this, but we continue to, as a Palestinian in the south here in Masaf Riyata and even in Jordan Valley, like Ayman Ghraib and other activists in the West Bank, they continue to speak up and to fight.
It makes me ask myself every time that we're doing a protest or doing a boycott campaign here in the United States, we always ask ourselves, how can we center the people back in Palestine? How can we make sure that this is something that aligns with the mission and aspiration? So I wanted to ask you a personal question. I know I'm being a little selfish here. I'm taking away from the time to comment, but I want to know what can we do to support communities like Masafa Yafa, specifically like what's happening right now.
Look, like our in the West Bank and what we can do to communities like my community and other communities is like I mean there is in our hand here in the West Bank we have nothing more than existing and continue resisting. But I mean in the people who are outside, they have many things they can do. And firstly, your politicians and your government that still ongoing, like spend and with it unending support to Israel and military and functionally to continue massacring our people and killing us in the daily basis. So this is like a part that's important rule that we should focus on and uh, put an end for this, as your government is representing you and your taxpayers are part of killing us and massacring us and being a part of the war crimes that have been committed on the ground. So is this like a very important thing to focus on, and you as a people who's like free and happy to join on the ground to be an activist with the people here with the international activists, they are very welcome. They will host them in our houses and will do a program of strengthen the resilience of the Palestinians on the ground, to be with them on the ground and documenting the daily attacks and crimes against the Palestinians, and adjust at least to not let the Palestinians feel that they are left alone, at least, And this is part of the thing that you can even use your privileges, that you can have more privileges than we do on our land and on the ground here, you know. So it's a part that you can support on the ground, to be with the people, to fight with them, and and then you can even get a more clear clear idea of the reality on the ground.
Very, very beautiful advice and it's a good reminder. I'm hearing a lot of urging our government who are complicit in the genocide and apartheid in Palestine to stop sending weapons, stop sending support, right? Talking to our politicians. And I'm hearing a lot of making sure that there is larger protests, larger boycott campaigns, people still showing up. I appreciate that advice, and inshallah, everyone here is going to do that. Ahmed, I finally just want to address the bigger picture of what you face. You described settler attacks and military rights, and often we hear that the settlers they acted in groups and were backed by the army. From what you've seen, how do the settlers and the police work together in Massachusetts? Do the soldiers come with them during the attacks? Do they ignore them? Are there cases where the settlers take over the land and then the army declares it
They
off
are
limits?
they are
What's the
they are one
collaboration?
they are one regime, and but they're trying to divide between each other, like they are different organizations or whatever, but they are one regime. And they, as we saw, and you can see many documentation about this, the settlers when they attack, they are always backed up by their military, and the police are also the one who can back them legally, you know. And we as the Palestinians, we have nothing to do in our hand. So we as a Palestinian, we just need to bear this bitter reality that we are living in, and to continue at least to not give them the chance of leaving or leaving the land and giving to them. So it's like there is no difference between them. They are just one regime to forcibly displace and kill and massacre the Palestinians on the ground. So this is like important thing just to clarify for the people and the audience who are hearing me now.
They all act as just one single agent, even if they try to make it seem like it's like the army's different, the settlers are different. It's the same people, the same occupation, and the settlers are, if anything, actually pushing it forward. The CMSF. I want to take a moment very quickly to thank Muhammad, but also to look if there's any questions that we can ask Muhammad. We do have a few minutes. If the audience has any questions, inshallah, uh, I will give 1 to 2 minutes for them to push their questions. In the meantime, while we get to questions, Muhammad, I wanted to ask you a question about the prisoners. Um, what are their experiences in the jail? You yourself have been in prison. What is that experience like in the Israeli jails, in those Zionist prisons?
Yeah, I was arrested, but not. I didn't reach the prison because there was no any justification to hold me in the prison first. But I have many friends who were arrested, like from Bethlehem or wherever. Like what they tell us from stories is really, really extremely like horrific, you know. And like I have many friends who were really fat, but after they just get out of the prison, they were like a stick, you know. So like it's really a prison of torture the Palestinians, and how they in the night they've been attacked and how they humiliated them and how they like even the food they just give them by grams, you know, just to live, you know. It's like per day you have a spoon or 2 spoons of rice and that's it, or the next day you have 1 egg to eat and that's it. So like it's crazy situation that have been going in the Israeli cells and prisons that's now I don't know how the prisoners are still alive, you know. So like I'm really appreciating their existence still in the prison, and I hope at some point they will be released soon, as they are like not prisoners, they are captives, you know, of this occupation. So like I hope this period will be end soon, and will like witness the ending of this brutal occupation.
Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to experience victory soon. And, um, I have one question from the audience to answer, inshallah. How do you and other Palestinians stay safe in the West Bank during the attacks? Is there police or help to protect them? I think you answered that, but in general, how do you guys?
Can you repeat because I didn't hear you.
The question was, how do Palestinians stay safe during the violence in the West Bank? How do you guys try to maintain your own safety during the attacks and the violence?
We cannot guarantee our safety first in any attack that happen. And firstly, like you cannot even deal. It just you can deal. It depends on what's the situation you are in that moment. So I cannot tell you what I can do because I don't know how the situation will happen, and I can't imagine because anything can be like just like fast scenario that will pass, and maybe you will be killed or you will be shot or you just need to, and while the other people who are trying to defend themselves from this terror attack. So it's like as much as we try to be away from not being killed or hurt, and but at the same time to not give them the chance to get deep into our communities and then burn our homes, our houses. So it's like you cannot tell what you will or how you do, but we can tell you from the last like witness of the attacks. So uh, like sometime if you are as a Palestinian, we are in some at some point in a place where like a low number that we are 10 and there is settlers who are like 100 settlers with the military and they're attacking us. So if we stay in that place, I mean for sure we'll be done at some point. So at least we need to be in a place where we'll be at least we can defend ourselves, you know.
Um, Jazakallah khairan from that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and reward your family for every moment of courage that you've shown, every
So
step that you guys have taken to defend your land and your dignity. We, as Palestinians outside of Palestine, we owe you a big debt that we can never repay. I want you to really know that we are thinking of you guys, and we feel that you're standing alone on those hills sometimes, but you're not alone, right? Your voices have reached us right now. Your stories are with us right now. The Prophet
Jazakallah.
ﷺ said that the believers are one body. So when one part hurts, we all feel that pain. So today we feel it for you. So may Allah strengthen you and expand your patience, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never allow us to forget the struggle and keep us besides you, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you. Allah take away for Habibi. It's been an honor to have you on.
Habib, welcome. Thank you, Habib.
Habibi. Habibi. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for this.
Habibi. It's very heartwarming. I will do try, inshallah, to wrap up the intro because I know my audio is not good. Can I just get a quick message from one of the PDM support members letting me know how is the audio? Can I do a good outro or should I just try to wrap it up, inshallah? Like I know it's a little bit hectic. Maybe I can even try to. Okay, perfect. Inshallah, I'll try to do an outro then. Bismillah. So I want to reflect on some of the themes. I know we talked about the unimaginable hardship from Dr. Majid in the healthcare system, being bombed or besieged, and Palestinian prisoners who have been tortured and starved, and of course the entire community of Safiyat who are facing slow ethnic cleansing. I know these are very heavy and painful realities, but amidst all of this, we also heard was resilience and hope, and specifically in the case of Safiyat and Gaza resistance, right? Effort to not abandon a land. And so from Dr. Majid in Gaza, despite treating those patients in hallways of destroyed hospitals with barely any supply, he and his colleagues have refused to give up on those who are living. And so the stories of the freed prisoners, those very terrifying, they affirm that under extreme torture, our people have remained steadfast, have remained with faith, and hope that freedom will come. So every single prisoner who is released, that is a testament that they cannot pressure fear. And so from Muhammad and Masafiyatullah, we heard how families have been standing their ground, how even grandmothers and grandfathers and fathers and so on have become literal pillars of resistance in these towns throughout Palestine, passing on the torch of Samud, not only to the next generation, but to us as well. And one common thread tonight is that prisoners, Palestinians, whether in actual jails or those who have been imprisoned in the siege of Gaza or the blockaded villages, they're all at the heart of the fight. They endure the worst of the oppression, the grunt of it all, and yet they are the first to shout for the freedom. And so I want you all to take this mentality with you, right? And their sacrifice and their courage, they should guide us. It should center them in a narrative as heroes, not as victims, or as leaders, not statistics. In the face of this entire system that's meant to break them, they have remained unbroken. And so we should embody this here. As long as they remain unbroken, Palestine remains unbroken. And our